It is cold today, something like 10 or 11 degrees. It's been snowing, dusting very lightly for like the last day, but it is freaking cold outside. Okay, so it's a little bit warmer in my garage. I figured today would be a good day, since I have to do some work on it, to introduce the Corvette Z06. I've had this car for a few years now. I bought the car with something like 74, 78,000 miles on it. It now has 120,000 miles. It's never given me a problem. It was my absolute dream car in high school. I worked my butt off for a long time to be able to be in a position where I could afford a car like this. Even though when I bought the car, it was not really that expensive, considering that they've come down in price considerably, and they were already a bargain when they were brand new, considering the amount of performance you get out of them. But it's a 2004 Z06 in machine silver with obviously the LS6 V8, 5.7 liters. It's been a wonderful car for the entire time that I've had it. I remember when I first took delivery of the car, I was shaking all the way home because I was so excited that I had one. And I looked over at the Z06 emblem on the seat, and I could not believe that I owned a Corvette Z06. That sort of waned after having the car for a long time. You sort of get used to it, but it's one of those cars where I get out at the grocery store to go walk in, and I always take a turn and look back at this car because I love it so much. But like I said, it's always been a great car. However, when I moved from California out here to the East Coast, it had a cracked radiator when I left California. I drove it 2,000 miles out here with a cracked radiator. The weirdest thing happened. I don't know if it was the plastic expanding from the constant heat of driving it for hours at a time, but the radiator stopped leaking. I had a radiator literally in my back seat on the way out here from California, just to make sure that if I ended up blowing the radiator, had a serious problem, that I could have it towed to the nearest shop and put the radiator in, or even put the radiator in myself. So ever since I got out here, I bought another car because for the winter months, and this car has just been sitting in the barn pretty much. I drove it quite a bit when I first got out here, but then I parked it in the barn, and I've been driving my winter car ever since. So, but now the car that I have for the winter has actually cracked the radiator. So it's time to change the radiator in the Corvette because the radiator for the other car is not coming until Tuesday. And I need this car to be running tomorrow and not leaking to get me to work. So the stock radiator has always served me well. I've never had any problems with the car cooling at all, even in the California summers. I don't think that out here in the Midwest / East Coast that I'm gonna have any issues with that. So since the stock one was always working, I figured I'd go and get a stock radiator to replace it. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Okay, so this car has been sitting in the barn for a bit. You can see there's some barn dust on it. Seen better days. It hasn't been detailed since I got the car. So all I've really been doing with this car is just driving the hell out of it. Right now, the issue with that is that the radiator is cracked. That's been needed to be done for a long time. And then on top of that, we've got another issue with it that's cropped up. Actually, just in the last few days when I went to drive it again because the radiator in my other car cracked. And that is the trunk. Drives me absolutely crazy. It used to be. These trunks are notorious for being difficult to close. If you drop it from this height, it definitely won't close. If you drop it from this height, it usually will close, and that fixes it. But now, it doesn't matter where you drop it from, it ain't closing anymore. So I'm gonna start taking this thing apart, and I'll update you along the way. Air cleaner's out. You know, this wire right here, this little piece of loom, is inside this little clip right here. And whereas your first instinct is just grab this whole clip and just yank it out of the plastic, it's not a good idea to do that. Actually, it's really easy. Take a flat blade screwdriver and put it just right up into the top right here and pry it down and out. It comes open so easy. And then you can get this wire free in order to be able to take this piece off right here. Once this is off, it's freaking game on. Everything in here is pretty much loose. You just have to disconnect all of the tabs down there. All right, so underneath here, got this little drain valve right there. All right, that's a little odd. This thing's supposed to go a quarter turn and then just start pouring out of that right there. So I don't know what's going on. You have to see what that's all about. Nothing makes your job easier than having the right tools. I have this drill that I've had for a little while, and I was at the hardware store and I bought this thing right here, which takes your drill and converts it into a 3/8" drive so that you can put it onto sockets, and then it really makes ripping out bolts like these right here a lot easier, because this with just a couple extensions down into that spot, and those bolts come out so fast. So for like not even $5 for this little thing, and it's really gonna serve me well. All right, the lower radiator hose was a pain. This one right here, down in there, and it was just in a position down there that it was just difficult to get to the clamp and get a pair of pliers on it to get it off. There's also these two. Remove those, and they have these spring clamps too, but I think I'm going to replace those with some stainless steel clamps. I got a pack of them a while back, so I'm going to replace those. And then I don't know why that valve at the bottom didn't drain the radiator. That's what it's supposed to do. So I don't know, but at least I drained most of it from the radiator hose. This, the lower radiator hose is only halfway to the bottom of the radiator, so when you pull the lower radiators off, it doesn't drain the radiator completely. It only drains about halfway, so it's all I got right now. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Okay, so moving to the upper radiator hose. See down there where the radiator's been leaking. It looks like it's coming from the bottom of the hose, but it's not. So that's the whole reason we're replacing the radiators right there. That's where I saw it leaking from. And you can see all that coolant leaking right there. So I'm sure the radiator's bad. So I had the upper radiator hose replaced, and that didn't fix the problem. It was still leaking. So I'm sure it's the plastic that is cracked, but where most of the way got it out of here, it's just stuck on the fan. So there's these 4 clips that are on each side of the fan shroud. Those are gonna have to come off of the radiator, because right now the whole thing is sort of like one big piece. It's not moving. This is almost completely free, but this is still totally attached to the fan shroud. I'm gonna have to pull that off, and then you need a pair of gloves too. These are getting pretty trashed. Okay, I'm running into a little bit of a problem where every time I try to pull this radiator up, it wants to go back down. It wants to grab on the hooks of this fan shroud. So what I did was I took this piece of aluminum here. I bought it at a hardware store a while ago for the battery mount. I don't know if you saw that video when I made the battery mount, but take this. It actually fits perfect to go right down in there. And I can use that to keep both those things apart, pry them apart when I lift the whole thing. So use this to hold the bottom off of it. And now this should be past both those clips. I should be able to pull it out now. All right, it took a lot of finagling and back and forthing, but it's finally out. It hangs up on everything coming out of there. Seems to me like this sucker has lived its useful life. It is filthy. Absolutely filthy. Back didn't look so bad, but this front here, man, that thing is dirty. Can't even see through it. Yeah, sort of. That's where I thought it was leaking. And, oh, that's not cool. That's not cool. But it looks like you can see some of the, but you can see it's been leaking for a long time, so I think it probably came from right here, and it was just leaking down this edge right there, just for a long, long time. All right, let's see if we can't get that new radiator and put it in there without beating it up too much. right, I think it's essentially in there. I just have to get the clips lined up on both sides and locked in, and then this thing will be ready to put the hoses back on and fill it up. Whew. That took quite a bit of finagling and lining up, but all the clips finally went in there and the whole thing is seated. So now it's just a matter of putting the hoses on and filling it with coolant, and it should be done. So got it all back together, just putting coolant in it, and this line right here started leaking like crazy right out of there. So I'm gonna attribute it to this metal clamp I put back on there. I was just gonna reuse those over again, but changed my mind. I'm gonna put a worm clamp on there instead, see if that doesn't fix it. Okay, so she's running, filled up with coolant. I'm not seeing any leaks right now. That one line that was leaking earlier, it's not leaking anymore. So I think it'd be safe to drive this thing now, and then see if it springs any leaks once I get out on the road with it. Okay, so the trunk latch was not latching. This is a big problem with fixed roof coupe and convertible Corvettes that have this trunk lid here instead of the glass hatch. What happens is somehow this thing right here, the actual mechanism gets out of adjustment. It's bolted in here like that, but there's a lot of play in the bowl holes. I don't know if you can see that right there, but there's a ton of play where these things actually bolt up. Now, they sit in there a certain specific way, lined up with the upper latch. The problem is the latch will not go down far enough to actually make the thing latch. So what I did was I pulled the whole latch out, assuming that something was damaged in the latch. But nothing is damaged in the latch because I tested it. So I just pulled the latch out and make sure it wasn't the latch was broken, and put it in here just like it would go, and it latches just fine. And with a flat blade screwdriver to turn this, pops right out. So the problem is not with the latch, it's with the actual adjustment. Now, from what I understand, it's like that with almost all fixed roof coupes. They do that eventually after opening and closing the trunk so many times. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to take these two bolts off and put some washers underneath there to space that out, to bring this down ever so slightly, and then hopefully when it gets pressed down into this, it will lock. When I bolted it up earlier, it actually shut once, and I thought I had it licked, but the next time I went to shut the trunk, it wouldn't shut again. So I'm going to try and shim this thing up here, and might even make a plate for it instead of just some washers. But I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot and see what happens. Hopefully it'll fix it. Okay, so I just took this whole thing apart and put it back together, and I don't even know what I did. I was going to put spacers on this, but I don't even know what I did. I took it apart, I put it back together, and the bolts that are like sort of loose in there, I put them back in, and I pushed the whole assembly down as far as it would go, and I tightened it up and connected everything back up. Bolted this back on just to see what would happen, and now it shuts. It shuts perfectly, better than it ever has. And that makes absolutely zero sense to me because it was so hard to shut before. And now it shuts and opens perfectly fine. So I seriously have no idea what I did. It was not wanting to shut when I was putting it back together, and that's when I was going to start putting shims in this, but I didn't even get a chance to put a shim in it because I took this piece just by itself and put it down in there, and it wouldn't latch. I kept pushing it, it wouldn't latch, and then finally I heard something sort of drop in the mechanism, and it latched, and I have no idea what it was or what happened, but now it shuts like better than it ever has. So that's totally weird, but I mean, if it's fixed, it's fixed. So the mystery, I'll handle the mystery as long as I don't have to worry about the trunk coming up while I drive anymore. did a piece on the Z06 and it was the yellow one. And I wanted the yellow one for the longest time. And of course the fact that it's 405 horsepower and it has that really nice shifting T56 6-speed. It's a great transmission. I started going to the pumps and I always fill it up with 91 when I was back in California, and I come out here and I'm looking at the pumps out here and it's 93, and I'd never seen 93 at the pump before, and I put 93 in this car, 93 octane, and it really runs good on 93, really good. When I got the Tide car and started wanting to do videos with the Tide car, I actually considered selling the Corvette, but when I actually thought about someone coming to meet me and handing them the keys and watching them sit down in this car and drive it away, I don't know what number on a check would make me okay with that. I'm willing to bet that it's more than most people would want to pay for this car. So with the radiator put in this thing, it's been running absolutely fine. There's no leaks. It stays at like around 190 now, where as before, I think because it was running low on coolant here and there from just always leaking, and I would check it every once in a while, but not all the time. So sometimes it would get a little lower than others. But I never let it go up above. I think I actually autocrossed it with a crash radiator too. And then when I was autocrossing it, I think it got up around like 240, 250. It was getting really hot. But now I haven't seen it get over 200, I don't think. Of course, I don't know the exact number because the gauge is sort of doesn't give a specific number. Sometimes this car sits for a little bit and I haven't driven it in a while. And I kind of forget about how good it is, and then I get in it and go for a drive, and it just all comes flooding back how good this car is. It's just this is a really great car. This episode. I'm glad you got to meet my Corvette. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, if you like my videos, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. I've got sockets and all kinds of stuff. Can I help you?
Yes, you
Turn
can.
around.
Yeah.
Go that way. Come on. Turn around. You're gonna trip. You almost knocked Ricky over. Don't touch Ricky. What are you kicking him over for? Come out of there. Come on. I'm trying to put my tools away. You're driving me crazy.
Again in the trunk.